My daughter left me while I was fighting cancer. 2 years after overcoming the illness, she suddenly returned. At that time, it seemed I was no longer around, and she appeared to be interested in inheritance. I am a 56-year-old woman who was diagnosed with colon cancer 7 months ago. Fortunately, it was detected early during a regular checkup, but no one is happy to hear they have a disease, no matter how optimistic the doctors may be. I returned home and told my daughter about it. She was also in a state of deep trauma. My daughter is my only family. Likewise, I am the only one for her. Her father is alive, but has no influence on our lives. I live with my 22-year-old daughter, Tracy. My husband and I divorced amicably 14 years ago. After the love faded, he moved to Atlanta with his girlfriend. I had custody of Tracy, who was 8 years old at the time. Tracy was a difficult child. Our divorce did not benefit her. She felt abandoned by her father and has since refused to contact him. I tried my best to raise her alone, but I couldn't bear her reaction when I talked about my cancer. Her expression was one of enduring pain, clearly hurt. We cried, embraced each other tightly, and reaffirmed our deep affection. We reminisced about the many fun moments we spent together, such as graduation ceremonies and annual vacations and hiking trips. She became my support and vowed to take care of me. I never thought she would leave me, but 7 months later, she packed her bags and left. I was left behind as if I were unnecessary. For years, I devoted myself to her. And this is the result. I understand it is difficult for a young woman to care for a sick mother. However, since the nurses were handling my care, she didn't need to do anything. All I wanted was for her to be by my side. The treatment was a burden physically and mentally, so the doctor advised me to quit my job or reduce it to the bare minimum. I reported this situation to my manager. He was very understanding and accommodating. If I regained my health, my position would be held for me. I quit my job to focus on treatment. Financial flexibility was not a problem. I had no major responsibilities. The house mortgage was already paid off, and my daughter's tuition was paid as she wished. I have enough savings for several years and some assets that can be liquidated if needed. Even if I ran out of cash on hand, I could utilize these assets. Furthermore, the treating physician was cooperative and optimistic about the treatments I was receiving. I underwent chemotherapy and regular checkups. Chemotherapy was very painful, causing strong fatigue, and I was unable to move for a day or two after treatment. Tracy's assistance was essential even for basic needs like preparing meals and medications. After I started using a wheelchair, although I could move around the house on days when I had strength, there were difficult days as well. The treatment was extremely draining, both physically and psychologically. I was worried that my bones would break because my body was too weak. Basic actions like eating, walking, and using the toilet became extremely difficult, increasing my irritation. As time passed, Tracy's attitude became colder, and she stopped showing her face in my room or talking properly. Our conversations often ended with her short responses. Being ignored by my daughter was extremely painful. In my lonely days, conversations with her were a temporary escape from my pain. When I felt hostility from her, I felt no greater pain. I asked her if I was burdening her. To that question, Tracy yelled, "I can't take it anymore." She claimed she was taking care of me. I understand that preparing meals for a sick person on time is difficult and that many young people dislike being around sick people. Therefore, I decided to hire a nurse to take care of that and informed her. I requested a home nursing service from the hospital, and an experienced cancer care nurse was assigned. I felt that the issue was resolved, but reality was different. Tracy continued to be gruff and ignored me. Not only did she keep her distance from me, but she also treated the nurse maliciously. I thought there would be no problem since I had asked the nurse not to interfere with Tracy, but Tracy treated the nurse harshly over trivial matters and even forbade her from touching the refrigerator or entering the kitchen. The nurse was cleaning the patient's feces, which seemed to displease her. Although Tracy said nothing directly, her attitude made it clear that she disliked the nurse. Seeing Tracy's displeased look, the nurse asked me if I was dissatisfied with her work. I didn't think so. Her duties were being performed very appropriately, and I had no complaints. After the nurse left in the evening, I pursued the matter of Tracy's attitude. Previously, I had asked Tracy to make considerations so that the nurse could work smoothly without me saying anything, but the limit had been reached, and the time had come for me to think of a way to prevent the nurse from quitting. When I pointed out her nastiness towards the nurse, Tracy showed her anger. She criticized me for overreacting. According to her, the nurse was unclean, and she was merely instructing basic hygiene. I raised my voice in anger. That was unthinkable. The nurse had professionally learned and trained in hygiene management and should have deeper knowledge than Tracy. It's absurd that Tracy, who dropped out of college, tried to take over giving instructions on hygiene. She furiously blamed me for ruining her life for about 10 minutes, continuously crying. She also accused me of being responsible for her feeling abandoned by her father and not having a normal childhood like other children. No matter how much she cried and screamed, it was just a minor thing to me. I was already used to her overreactions. It's something I've experienced many times. What was shocking was her false claims. She insisted that the nurse's appearance and smell were terrible. She accused me of being a supporter of the nurse. Since I'm single, she speculated that the nurse was coaxing me to inherit my wealth. I interrupted her and asked what basis she had for such delusions. "You're crazy." The argument escalated, and she slammed the door as she left the room. An hour passed, and I heard a loud voice from the living room again. As she was leaving the house dragging her suitcase, she shouted loudly, "I'm leaving here for your happiness, just as you wanted. Be happy with your favorite nurse. It's okay to give all your property to her, but keep in mind I won't show my face when you die. I'm not coming back." I thought about stopping her, but her words shattered my heart. Tears overflowed, and I sat by the window watching her load her suitcase into the car and leave. Weeks have passed since she left, and I feel worthless every day. I am acutely aware of my failure as a mother. Her words have hurt me more than the illness. I struggle to understand why she insists I will leave my estate to the nurse. Why would she think that I would sacrifice myself for the nurse? I feel like I have failed in every aspect. I failed as a wife to my former husband and as a mother. I no longer find the will to continue treatment. Additionally, I want to add about Tracy. A kind person asked me why my 22-year-old daughter still lived with me and why she went to therapy as a child. I tried various means, including psychological counseling, to help her manage her emotions. I personally have no experience with therapy. Tracy could not accept the reality of our divorce and became aggressive. Therapy provided her some support, but her emotional outbursts occurred frequently. She dropped out of college. Later, she got married, but as she began to consider divorce, I tried to persuade her, but she refused my advice. At that time, she wanted to start her own business and began running a beauty salon. I also funded her business. Then she met a man she considered her destiny and wanted to marry him within less than a year of dating. She was still 19 years old at the time. I advised her to take more time and think it over, but she prioritized her own will. However, the marriage did not last even a year, and she returned to me again. Her ex-husband was unemployed and relied on her beauty salon's income. Eventually, they ran out of funds and had to let go of the salon. After that, he quickly left her. She could not receive any compensation. Her ex-husband was bankrupt, and she lost both her income and husband. Ultimately, I had no choice but to welcome her back into my home. How many people realize the fact that my 22-year-old daughter, who lived with me under these circumstances, abandoned me while I was on the brink of life and death? Months later, I completed the final stage of chemotherapy. Then I was diagnosed as completely cured of cancer. I feel immeasurable gratitude to the medical team that provided this perfect treatment. After being abandoned by my daughter, my mental state significantly worsened, making it difficult to focus on cancer treatment, and my symptoms deteriorated. This necessitated a revision of the treatment plan by the doctors. To alleviate mental distress, they offered me counseling. I would not have gotten through it without this. In the first counseling session, I just cried out loud. It was a relief to open up and talk after a long time, indescribable in words. I felt like giving up the fight against cancer and thought it would be better to succumb to the illness, but the doctors sincerely addressed my depression and despair. They recommended that I continue receiving counseling. I rehired a full-time nurse because living alone had become difficult, and to be able to respond immediately to any emergencies. I offered double the salary to the previous nurse and requested her to work again. She was familiar with my medical history and diagnosis, and I wanted to rely on her. If Tracy were here, she would criticize me for hiring a full-time nurse. The thought that she might blame me for something unexpected weighs on my heart. After all, I have overcome my daughter. I should not have thought about the daughter who abandoned me when I was at my lowest. The only ones I should cherish are my doctors and nurses. I continued to focus on treatment. Accompanying the nurse to chemotherapy sessions made me realize that it was mentally and physically easier than when Tracy used to accompany me. She was always irritable, adding on more mental burden to me than the pain of the treatment. I lost my hair and weight, but resolved to overcome it positively. It may sound bad, but I felt it was good that Tracy left the house. As time passed, I felt the negative elements in my life disappearing. I have never felt such relief before. I had been obsessively focused on Tracy as the sole purpose of my life, sacrificing my happiness for her. But being abandoned taught me an important lesson. There are limits to obligation, love, and compassion, and they should not be excessive. As a mother, I should not be exploited or trampled upon. I endured being treated like a punching bag by her, but I've reached my limit. Now I have finally gained my freedom. I look forward to starting a new life. I originally planned to return to work, but I don't feel the need to do so yet. I have enough savings to live on. If the funds run out, I consider starting a part-time job at a supermarket, but currently, I am focusing on gaining weight and building muscle. I started with walking and gradually want to try jogging or running. It's not easy to breathe normally in daily life. I still feel tired after finishing household chores, but I am making progress bit by bit. I still receive support from a nurse, but I plan to live on my own as my condition improves further. I'll also report on what has happened since then. It has been 2 years since I was declared completely cured of cancer. During this time, I have spent my days only doing what I enjoy. I realized I had never spent my days on things I liked. Even when I was working, I devoted my days off to taking care of my daughter. To make up for the absence of her father, I dedicated all my time to her and avoided relationships with other men. I avoided men like a ghost and sometimes felt guilty about it. I didn't date to protect my daughter. After she became an adult, I felt that my actions were excessive. Despite having free time, I hadn't made much use of it. I was concerned that my relationship with Tracy might not work out. Even after she returned to live with me following her 10-month marriage, I felt it would be difficult to live with another man even after being cured of cancer. Therefore, I started dating. The first date was very awkward. Modern men use a lot of jargon and slang, so I often had to look up phrases on Google. There were many moments during simple conversations that made me laugh a lot. I met about 6 men through several dating apps, but one man moved my heart. I didn't build deep relationships with all 6. We simply enjoyed dinner or coffee together. I'll call this man S. He's in his early 50s and was repeatedly betrayed by his wife, who he tried to build a home with several times for the sake of his daughter, but his wife did not change. Eventually, he left home and became a single father, raising his daughter alone. Now that his daughter has gone to college, he started dating again, encouraged by his daughter. When he talks about his daughter with joy, I sometimes feel jealous. It's not bad, but I wonder if Tracy didn't reciprocate my love because of my own mistakes. About 6 to 7 months after meeting S, I decided to start living with him. It may seem like a sudden decision. However, I feel there's no issue with this choice. I will soon turn 60. Within a few decades, I will be in the grave. I considered staying in my own residence, but ultimately chose to live in his home. He has a very sophisticated sense and has tailored the decor to his taste. I wasn't very good at maintaining a home myself, and my interest in decor had faded. Moreover, I had no particular attachment or good memories associated with the house I was living in. Because I needed a fresh start, I eventually let go of the house. If asked why I did so, I would say I sold the house for cash to live a prosperous life. I sometimes wondered if I should have kept the house for the daughter who abandoned me. But Tracy had left me, almost leading me to death, so I felt no need to keep it. Then, last week, an interesting incident occurred. While relaxing with S, I received a call from Jason, who had bought my house. He was furious, reporting that a woman had trespassed on his property and caused significant chaos. This woman had trouble with Jason's partner. Apparently, she had a key to the house, but it didn't work, and she started banging on the door. Jason's partner opened the door and yelled at her. At that moment, the woman aggressively retaliated, calling him a bastard. Her voice was clearly filled with anger. The woman demanded to be let into the house and banged on the door to show her determination. Confused by this sudden event, Jason's partner claimed that it all was a misunderstanding. However, the woman did not listen to her words and vehemently argued back. She claimed that the house was once owned by her deceased mother and insisted that they should leave. Calmly, Jason's partner explained that Jason had legally purchased the house. When Jason bought the house from me, he and his partner were not yet dating, so his partner did not know me. Later, Jason's partner hurriedly contacted him to report the situation, but the woman had already threatened to return the next day with friends and left the scene angrily. It was clear to me that the woman was Tracy. Jason asked me if I knew this woman. He was obviously upset. While understanding his disturbance, I honestly revealed that she is my daughter. He strongly demanded that I come the next day to resolve the issue. He also issued a stern warning that he would call the police if it wasn't settled. Feeling responsible for all that had transpired, I deeply contemplated the need to have a serious discussion with my daughter Tracy and to ensure that Jason and his partner would not be further troubled. The next day, I headed to the house where I once lived, waiting for Tracy's arrival. She came to our location with 2 close friends. Upon arrival, she immediately began to scream in anger at the entrance and forcefully destroyed a potted plant that was placed there. At that moment, Jason, in self-defense, grabbed a baseball bat and opened the door without hesitation to strongly intimidate them. I had previously pleaded with him to refrain from such actions. However, as a baseball coach engaged in daily training, once he made up his mind about something, it was nearly impossible for me to stop him. Before he could approach Tracy and her friends, I hurried outside. At that moment, Tracy completely stopped moving, and her friends similarly froze. She lost all her strength, and with a blank expression, she quietly muttered, "You're still alive, Mom? I thought you had died. What happened to your cancer?" Her expression, a mix of astonishment and disbelief, was incredibly striking. Her complexion then rapidly turned pale. Pointing her finger, she asked about Jason and his girlfriend. "Who are these people?" "They are the new owners of this house," I answered calmly. After telling her that I had sold the house to them for cash, Tracy bombarded me with questions. "What did you use that money for? Are you not going to die now?" Had it been the old me, I might have been deeply hurt by her words, but that day was different. I showed no emotion and remained composed. And laughing loudly at her, I said, "Currently, I no longer suffer from cancer. Just to let you know, you will not be able to gain anything from me anymore. I have already quit my job and decided to use all the funds I have for myself. You will be alone from now on. Consider it as if I no longer exist in this world." Tracy stood there, crying. Her friends left the scene, stating that this was entirely a matter between mother and daughter. I told Jason that if any problems arose in the future, he should obtain a restraining order against Tracy through the police. Tracy chased after me, crying and pleading. "Mom, please don't do this. I am your daughter, the only family you have. Please don't leave me." With a cold smile, I said to her, "Just as I am leaving you now, you should also let me go." With that, I got into my car and quietly drove away. Normally, one might expect to be engulfed in regret or sadness in such a situation, but that day, I felt light-hearted, with a deep sense of satisfaction and liberation. I am confident that my decision was not wrong. As a parent, I now clearly understand that I should have let her go much earlier. I sincerely hope that the confusion I experienced will not befall anyone else.